Welcome to Nobody Told Me. I'm Jan Black.
And I'm Laura Owens.
Joining us on this episode is nutritional therapy consultant and fitness coach Steph Gaudreau, author of the new book, The Core Four: Embrace Your Body, Own Your Power.
And Steph's book features strength training workouts, meal plans, journal prompts, and more to help you feel energetic, active, confident, strong, resilient, and ready to change the world. Steph, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Talk to us a little bit about your background and why you wrote The Core Four.
Yeah, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to highlight the most important points. You know, it's really a combination of personal experience and some of the things that I've struggled with throughout my life, married together with my professional experience. And I had a career change about 12 years into my first career. I was a high school science teacher, taught chemistry and biology, always been a bit of a science nerd. And throughout my process, as I said, of sort of dealing with my own things that I was really challenged with body image and having no body confidence and dieting and living and dying by the number on the scale and exercising as a way to earn food or a way to punish myself for what I ate. My sort of 10-year journey of coming to a much different place in my life, coupled with this career change that I made, really brought me to this point that I'm at today. And my mission is really to help women, particularly women in middle age, just because I feel like that's who I relate to, because that's who I am, is to help women really start to embrace these powerful, strong bodies that they have and realize how very powerful they really are, and that a perfect body is not the most important gift that we can ever give the world. We have so much more to offer than that.
You talk about hitting rock bottom in the book. When did you hit rock bottom, and how did that impact you?
Yeah, it was about 2010, so almost 10 years ago. I was at the end of about 8 years of endurance racing. And for me, over the years, running and biking many, many hundreds of miles, week after week after week, and then eventually getting into triathlons, so swimming on top of it. At the end of that sort of 8-year experience, I was really deep in the triathlon scene, and I had just got done racing endurance distance mountain bikes, so I would be on the bike for 6 to 24 hours at a time.
Wow.
And I started to realize that, you know, in our culture, in our country, exercise is so praised, and certainly we want people to be active, but I don't think I even realized it until it was this really low moment for me that I was using exercise, yes, as a transactional relationship to earn food or burn calories and to try to get smaller and to try to numb my pain of just feeling like I was never good enough. And I was doing a race in Lake Tahoe, triathlon, and we were leaving town after the race, and my then husband and I stopped at this really beautiful waterfall and took a picture, and I was sort of doing this, you know, muscle bodybuilder type pose and thinking I looked really tough. And when I looked back at that photo as we drove away, I just thought, you look disgusting. And I realized then that something had to change, because when I looked back at that photo, I was the smallest I had been in probably my entire adult life. But I could not rectify how I felt about myself, how I perceived that I looked, how I thought other people looked at me, my level of self-consciousness, my level of believing that I would, you know, if I could only be thinner and smaller, I would be so much happier. And that was sort of a gut punch moment for me, realizing that I still didn't feel good about myself, even though I had reached this scale weight. And I don't like to say numbers because I don't want to prompt any comparison with people, but it truly was the lowest scale weight of my adult life. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, it's never enough. It's not enough. I need to be smaller than this. And that really was kind of the turning point for me. About a month later, I actually walked into a CrossFit gym for the first time and started to learn how to lift weights, and kind of left the endurance racing world behind because it was not a healthy pursuit for me any longer. So that was really sort of the lowest point I really felt like I was at.
So what are the core four pillars, and how is it different than other books and other ideas on health and fitness?
Yeah, the core four pillars are really this 4-area approach. And when I work with people, whether it's in my community or my group coaching program, I really see that most people are really focused on one area of their health. And yes, we don't want people to get overwhelmed and try to do it all. But what I mean is, for example, a lot of women tend to be really stuck on diet and dieting and, year after year after year, right? Trying to see that scale go down by that last 5 pounds and really just taking it pretty far and not realizing that there's lots of other things that contribute to our overall health and wellness. But the core 4 are really the 4 things that if we can do these fairly consistently and introduce the idea of nourishment and doing things that fit our lives and learning to listen to our bodies and our intuition, if we can gradually move in that direction, we find so much more sustainability. And one of the reasons why diet and exercise is so frustrating for people is that they go all in, they try to cut out everything that they love, they try to do exercises that they hate, and no wonder. We can only hang on to that for so long before it becomes horrible and uncomfortable and something that we don't enjoy doing, and we stop. So the core 4 are to eat nourishing foods, move with intention, recharge your energy, and empower your mind. And there are other books out there. I think, we're seeing things starting to change that are focusing more on a more holistic approach, that are less weight loss focused, that are more lifestyle, really habit focused. No matter what our weight is, do we deserve to nourish our bodies with this wonderful assortment of foods? And one of the things I talk about in the book is, and initially and automatically when people think, oh, nutrition, oh, dieting, diet is in here. And I say diet like all the foods that we eat, not as a verb, but as a noun, our diet. People think, oh, well, what do I have to cut out, Steph? What's the first thing you're going to tell me I can't eat? And I take a slightly different approach with people, which is to say, what can we add into our life? What can we add into the picture? Can we add another vegetable this week? Could we start there? Could we start with, and this sounds so funny, but I think you'll agree, people love pretty colors. And when I used to teach chemistry, the most popular lab that we ever did was the flame test lab because it was pretty colors. And I just think kids of all ages love pretty colors. Could we think about this week introducing a new fruit or vegetable from all colors of the rainbow? I mean, can we just keep it fun and simple and go from there and really look at this additive approach, especially with food. With movement, it's like doing things that we like, because that's really what we're going to keep doing. So a lot of that is woven throughout the book, and it's really coming from a place of not shaming ourselves, of not feeling guilty, because as women, we feel guilty for not doing everything and being perfect. And, all this stuff is really, we're really working collectively, I think, to overcome it. So I'm really trying to put the message out there and get women behind this idea that we are incredible. We do deserve to take care of ourselves because we are worth it, not because I think there's this thing of like, we have to take care of ourselves so we can take care of others. And yes, I think that's true. But also we just deserve to we deserve to take care of ourselves, full stop. So there are a lot of messages like that woven throughout the book. And I think that does set it apart from a lot of other books in the nutrition and fitness space that come from a place of, it's kind of subtle. And if you understand marketing, you can see it, that you'll be better off when, or you'll be happier when, if you can just achieve this narrow definition of what it is to have a worthy body or have a socially acceptable body. And I think we're challenging that, and I think things are changing. But I hope my book is one part of that collective conversation.
Our Nobody Told Me conversation continues in just a moment. Much like our extraordinary guests on Nobody Told Me, many Air Medcare Network members have their own inspiring stories to share.
They never thought the unthinkable would actually happen to them, But when it did, they were relieved to have their Air Medcare Network, AMCN, membership.
If a medical emergency arises, Air Medcare Network provides members with world-class air transport services to the nearest appropriate hospital with no out-of-pocket expenses.
More and more, insurance fails to cover the full cost of a medical emergency. Secure protection and financial peace of mind for your entire household by joining Air Medcare Network today. Memberships cost as low as $65 a year and cover 38 states.
Plus, right now, as a Nobody Told Me listener, you'll get a $10 Visa gift card with a new one-year membership.
Visit airmedcarenetwork.com/nobody and use offer code NOBODY.
Again, for a $10 Visa gift card with a new one-year membership, just visit airmedcarenetwork.com/nobody and use offer code NOBODY.
When you talk about Pillar 1 and eating nourishing foods, what message do you want to get out to people about eating protein, for example?
Yeah, protein's a tricky one. I feel like there's this like a bad game of telephone, and anybody who is old enough to know what telephone is knows that, you sit in a big circle and somebody starts by saying a message and you whisper it into the ear of the person next to you, and that goes on and on and on and on, and by the time it gets back around to you, the message is really distorted. And I think we're dealing with a little bit of that. I come from this world where sometimes people look really skeptically at me and say, well, we're all unhealthy because we're eating too much and we're not moving enough. And I say, well, there could be some of that, but also nutrition is so much more than just caloric intake, for example. We need to look at, and this isn't necessarily something the average person needs to get overly stuck in the weeds about, but we need to think about, am I building a balanced plate? What would that look like? Am I eating enough protein? Do I know that protein is actually the most satiating macronutrient? And I think there are a lot of people who are actually eating not enough and moving too much. And that was the camp that I came from. And so I think it's across the board. We have this wide swath of folks who are really struggling to figure out, what do we need to eat? How much should we be eating? And unfortunately, we've lost our way when it comes to intuitive eating and stuff like that. But I think a lot of women are really scared to eat protein. There's this message out there, again, that game of telephone, that protein is going to ruin our kidneys. And certainly if you have CKD or chronic kidney disease, you need to be very mindful and work with your doctor and probably a nutritionist to make sure that you are not overeating protein because your kidneys are compromised. But overall, I think that's a really terrible myth that keeps perpetuating. It keeps women really scared of eating protein. Mm-hmm. The other one that I see is, there's a lot of argument about plant proteins or animal proteins. And I would just love people to know that, yeah, we can get protein from lots of different sources, but if we're only going to rely on plant material for our protein, we're going to have to eat a lot more of it. So that plays into the, eat less and move more. And you can see why people get super confused. The other thing is that a lot of people repeat the RDA or the RDI, which is the recommended daily allowance or intake for protein. And they say, this is how much protein, maximum we should be eating. And actually, if you look at how this is written out, and the intention there is that the RDI or the RDA for protein is really the minimum required to sustain ourselves. It's the bare minimum. It's not the optimal level. So we need to be a little bit smarter when it comes to that. And I can see why people get really confused. But I would just love women to know that even as we get into perimenopause and menopause, our protein intake is so important. We really want to preserve our lean muscle mass, because that's going to help us with our metabolism. It also helps us to stay strong. It's a reserve for if we get sick or injured or we have surgery or, we're aging, and that's really, really important. So let's not be terrified to eat protein. It actually might help you if you skip breakfast or you eat a very light breakfast and you're hungry and 2 hours later, and then you find that you overeat throughout the day. I see this in a lot of my clients and the people I work with as well. They try so hard not to eat very much in the morning, and they try so hard not to eat very much at lunch, and then they get home. Their willpower has been absolutely eroded through the whole day, right? Every time you don't flip out on your jerk face boss, every time you decide not to lay on the horn in traffic, every time you decide you're going to not scream at your kids. Like, you're using that willpower up. You get home, you're tired, and you're hungry. And the first thing that people tell me is, I get home and it's like the gloves come off, Steph. I can't control myself. And I'm like, that's because you're hungry. Can we start by introducing, a balanced plate, a little bit more food, maybe some extra protein, increase our amounts of sort of nourishing fat so we're feeling satiated and slowing digestion. And so that's where some of the detail comes in with the women that I work with.
I love the idea of meal planning, and I've always thought about doing this myself, but I'm not somebody who cooks. So what are your ideas for people like me who want to eat healthy, who want to stay accountable to a certain diet and make sure they're not including too many processed foods, but they don't cook?
Yeah. So I think there's a bunch of options these days, and you kind of have to think about what suits you, what suits your lifestyle, and what suits your budget. And so, certain of these may or may not work for people, but there are tons of amazing meal delivery services you can probably find if you live in a major metropolitan area.
Sure.
Sometimes you can get pre-cooked, like, amazing, nourishing, delicious food delivered right to your door. Sometimes you can get the boxes where they send you all the ingredients and some instructions, and then you prep that food yourself. There are options like, hey, could we take maybe one day a month and prep some meals for the freezer and just stock our freezer up so that if we're in a pinch, we can pull something out and defrost it and we're ready to go. There are also freezer sort of meals that you can put together, and you just put everything in the bag. You don't cook it, but you put everything in the bag, the protein, you put the vegetables and the spices, and you freeze it. And when you're ready to cook it, you take it out and you throw it in the slow cooker, or you throw it in the Instant Pot and it cooks itself. So, we're sort of like going like from least amount of work to most amount of work. And then, of course, you could think about, so I think when people think of meal prep, they either think of one of two things. They think 21 identical black plastic containers with the same meal in it, and it's like gross and has no flavor.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Right? And I don't think that's very interesting. And of course, humans, we love novelty. We get bored after a few days. So what I like is a different view of meal prep, which is, can we prep real smart and prep some proteins, prep some veggies? A lot of times I keep stuff kind of plain. I don't overly season it. For example, I might not make two whole trays of vegetables and put curry powder all over both trays, because after a few days, I'm going to get real sick of curry-flavored vegetables. So maybe I keep everything plain. I roast it up. I'm going to roast 2 trays at once in my oven, because why? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just use what we have. And then throughout the week, I can pull those. I can put some in a frittata. I could put some just next to my cooked protein that I make. I can flavor that exactly how I like. I can cook some, boil a dozen eggs, and I have those for quick protein. I can reach in the fridge. So I really love that idea. Roast 2 chickens. I pull the meat off. I can eat some of that for dinner that night. The rest of it I can make into chicken salad, and then I've got a chicken bones I can use to make soup in my Instant Pot. It cooks itself. So I love that idea of rolling food forward and cooking smarter, not harder. But I think you're right. There is some amount of, especially if we're trying to avoid more heavily processed foods, can we start where we're at? And cooking for some people is really novel. They don't feel comfortable. They don't feel confident. And so how can you work your way up to doing that? And can you start small? Maybe you start with a couple things, and then as you grow in your own confidence and skills, you can start to learn what really works for you and what you like the taste of, and how much food you need to sort of make for your week and all that stuff.
Our Nobody Told Me interview continues in just a minute after we tell you about our sponsor, trustandwill.com, which features estate planning simplified. An estate plan outlines how you'd like to care for the things that are most important to you, like your kids, your pets, and your home.
Have you been procrastinating about finishing your will? Thanks to trustandwill.com, you can finish in just 10 minutes for all 50 states completely online. And they have people available to instantly answer any questions you might have.
Laura and I are a mother-daughter duo, and as you can imagine, I want to protect her and the rest of my family in case something bad and unexpected happens to me. I couldn't believe how easy the trustandwill.com website is to navigate. It walks you through the whole process, helping you decide what's best for you at whatever stage of life you're in.
Seriously, it's so easy. Do it for your family. Do it for your loved ones. Guardianships start at $39, wills at $69, and trusts at $399. Gain peace of mind by protecting your assets in your family.
Take 10% off by going to trustandwill.com/nobodytoldme or entering promo code NobodyToldMe at trustandwill.com.
Again, take 10% off by going to trustandwill.com/nobodytoldme or enter promo code NobodyToldMe at trustandwill.com.
Another thing you do in the book is to advise people to eat mindfully, and I thought this was fascinating. Explain more about what's involved with that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to eat nourishing foods and that concept of nutrition, we focus really heavily on the what. Eat this, not that, avoid this, always eat this. We focus a lot on what goes into it, but there's also this aspect of the how that we eat that I would love people to consider. And again, I think this is one of those things where if we've only ever focused on the what and we never thought about how we're eating, is there something there we could make an improvement on? And I think that could pay dividends. So, for example, personal story, my husband always gets done eating really, really fast. And so I challenged him at one point, because this is the nutritional therapist in me, hey, can you slow down a little bit? What would that be like? What would that be like for you to chew your food more? And he took on the challenge, but he was like, this is so weird. And I think that a lot of us, we're busy, we're distracted, we're eating in the car, we're eating, and I will raise my hand here and say I am not perfect at this. We're eating while we're doing all these other things. Rarely do we even take one meal a day to sit down, take some deep breaths so that we can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest part of our nervous system that helps our digestive system get going. So if you're always like, oh, I'm so bloated, I feel so heavy after I eat, it's sitting in my gut, or you have stomach issues, and your belly just doesn't feel great. This is a huge area that could help you. It's just slowing down. Can we breathe? Because when we're in the stressed out state, right, that's the sympathetic, our body, whether a bear is chasing us or we're just worried about stuff, or we're going through a tough time at work or whatever it is, our body sends less resources to our gut so that we can digest our food. So chewing a little bit more, taking the time, smell your food, really look at it, really, give gratitude for that food. I think those are really simple things that we can just start by, introducing a few of these concepts. Yeah, think about the texture, think about the taste. And there's a whole other arm of sort of intuitive eating principles that's not in the book, but that's another great place for people to investigate if they're like, I don't even know how to, sense that I'm full. How does that happen? I just eat a whole Chipotle burrito in 3 minutes and then my stomach hurts and I totally miss the signal. So there's a lot of communication that happens between the mouth and the brain and mouth and the stomach, and it's all interconnected. And so I think, slowing down, paying attention, breathing a little bit, if we can sit, if we can take some time away from our desk, all of those things are little things that challenge ourselves to do those things and see how it goes.
We have a lot of entrepreneurs and people with big goals who listen to this show and are constantly feeling run down. And you talk a lot about some good tips for replenishing energy. Can you share those with us?
Oh, for sure. So as an entrepreneur, I totally understand this as well. And I think, I just want to see the people out there who are thinking, okay, we're recording this on a holiday. And I just think, when's the last time I had Labor Day truly off? Because we work a lot. We work all the time, or we're always on. And I think about, a lot of books on wellness or a lot of programs that talk about, maybe they even have pillars that talk about sleep and why that's really important. And I think, okay, that's a start. But we're asleep for maybe 8 hours a day. What do we do the other 16 hours? How do we work? How is that potentially leaving us feeling really fried? And I don't know about you, but sometimes, I used to get to the end of the day before I started incorporating some of these tips, and I would feel like I was busy all day, but I got nothing done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I get to the end of the day and think, what did I accomplish here? I just felt like there was like a mad race going on in my brain, but I didn't actually do anything. And I think when we look at countries, we look at some of the Scandinavian countries, for example, they're taking work days and really shaving off 2 hours. People are going into work for 6 hours. How is that possible? Wouldn't their productivity go way down? And the answer is no. We're, especially in America and in most of our corporate culture settings, at least, or even if we're self-employed, sometimes we tend to, or we're entrepreneurial, we tend to take on the workflow that we learned when we were at other jobs. And I think we're trying to work many, many hours without taking a break. And we are cyclical beings. We are biological beings. We're not computers. We're not a phone where we can run straight for 8 hours and just drain the battery and our performance is the same. So how can we introduce some other ways to replenish energy and, by the way, end up being more productive? I don't know about you, but when's the last time you sat down and you said, okay, I'm going to work for maybe 4 hours solid, and I had this really creative task or something I really need to think a lot about, or even a physical task, and you get past about 2 hours, and then you kind of start fapping around. I'm going to check. Oh, I'm just going to check Facebook, or I'm just going to. Your brain's looking for a break.
Yeah,
right.
And so can we build that into our day? And yes, it's not always possible, but if you are self-employed or you have more flexibility, every 2 hours, 90 minutes to 2 hours, can you take a little bit of a break, 15 to 30 minutes? And one of the things I really love that's in the book is talking about channel switching. And I didn't invent this concept, but I really love it, and I wanted to introduce it to my audience. And that is, if you have a really mentally demanding job, which most entrepreneurs have, right? We're wearing so many hats. We're doing we're finance, and we're doing creative, and we're overseeing so many levers in our businesses. Can we take that time in our break and get away from a mentally draining task during our break? Because a lot of us will sit there and we'll answer email or we'll scroll social media. And again, I first want to raise my hand and say this is a work in progress. But when I make myself get off devices and when I just give myself a chance to go take a short walk or go eat a meal or go sit outside or just give my brain a rest, I get back to work and I'm like right back into it. And I feel so much better by the end of the day. So that's one example. If you have a physical job where you're up on your feet all day or really, expending a lot of physical energy, then your channel switch might be not going to the gym and killing yourself with a workout during your break. Maybe you rest and you recuperate a little bit. And there's a lot of examples that are in the book. So I really love that idea of channel switching and taking more frequent breaks than we think we need, because if we really are honest with ourselves, we're multitasking our faces off. And every time we switch tasks, that requires something like 15 minutes to get back and focused into what we're doing. And I saw this all the time when I was a teacher, is that we'd say, okay, we're going to move on to the next thing. And some kids weren't even getting into the task that we had just finished. So that switching cost is so high. So cutting down on the multitasking, putting the most important parts of your workday in the times of the day that work best for you. I'm an early morning person. If I need to do something really focused or really creative, morning is my time. By the time I have lunch and it's the afternoon, I'm done. Mm-hmm. My friend Kate, that I write about in the book, she's the opposite. She writes at night because she feels way less inhibited. She's not as apt to keep questioning everything she's writing. She says, I can just write more freely. So you really kind of have to learn how you work best and leverage those times of the day so that, again, you get to the end of the day, you feel like you got some stuff done, but you're not absolutely drained before you go home.
How important is sleep in all of this?
Oh, sleep is so important. And I know people don't want to believe this, but, sleep disturbances aside, and there are some, I do write about some things in the book, for example, if our blood sugar is way off or our cortisol is way off, that can affect our sleep. And some of these things that are in the book, like getting movement and really working on nourishing foods, like those sometimes will feed into our sleep. But sometimes it is, I think for a lot of people, it comes down to making things a routine. And I think that's one of the hardest things to hear, because we think, okay, well, when I was a kid, I had a bedtime routine and my parents made me go to sleep at a certain time, and it was so terrible. And I said, when I'm an adult, I'm going to do what I want. And then we get to be adults and we don't have a routine. And as much as you can, syncing your routine to your circadian rhythm really helps that rhythm get more regulated. So a consistent sleep and wake time, for example, is so key. Getting enough sleep also plays into, yes, our physical and psychological recovery, but even things like our hormonal balance. So I see in a lot of people who don't get very good sleep, they have more sort of hormonal imbalance that drives cravings. Not that every craving is bad, but I see that a lot is we're tired, we're exhausted, we don't feel good. We think oftentimes that we're coping okay. And so this is where I like to extend parents or caregivers of maybe you're caregiving for an adult family member or an elderly family member, people who do have disrupted sleep schedules. This is where I try to extend them some grace and say, they're going through a tough time and maybe not feeling really well rested. So instead of, if your movement before your life situation changed was you were doing super intense workouts like 5 times a week, maybe now you give yourself a little bit more grace, again, to not work out quite so hard and just say, right now, the best thing for my recovery is actually going to be as much rest as I can get. So I try to be really mindful of the fact that not everybody has the same sleep schedule, but I also think that if you have a challenging sleep schedule for those reasons, there's still sleep hygiene things that you can do to make your sleeping environment a little bit more conducive to getting good rest. So basic things like blackout curtains, getting your room as dark as possible, really making an effort to move the technology out of the bedroom. I think this is one of the most important things that people can do. And it's weird at first if you're used to laying in bed with the phone screen, 2 inches away from your face. But if you can say, okay, the phone gets charged, it lives in the living room, and then you make your bedroom a tech-free zone, your sleep will be so much better, especially if you're not wearing any kind of blue light blocking glasses or anything like that, because we're really pouring that stimulatory blue light into our eyes at night when our bodies actually want to wind down. So there are lots of little things that people can do. I think there are lower barrier to entry things. And then there are some other things that are a little bit tougher to do, and those sorts of habit changes to shift.
And Steph, what is your nobody told me lesson? What is it that you wish someone had told you about health or nutrition or fitness that would have saved you some time and hard lessons long ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would be that health does, weight does not necessarily determine health, and that those two things may overlap, but they should not be confounded with one another. And I think that would have been a really important lesson to learn.
And Steph, how can people connect with you on social media and the internet?
They can find me on my website, which is stephgaudreau.com. And from there, you can find links to my book, my podcast, and all of my social media. I'm probably most active on Instagram, and that's Steph_Gaudreau.
Our thanks to nutritional therapy consultant and fitness coach Steph Gaudreau, whose new book is called The Core 4, Embrace Your Body, Own Your Power. And her website is stephgaudreau.com. Her podcast is called Harder to Kill Radio. I'm Laura Owens.
And I'm Jan Black.
And you've been listening to Nobody Told Me. Thank you so much for joining us.